Welcome to the Half Yard Line. I'm Tim.
I am Luke.
A little late with
Tim,
the microphone there.
Tim, there's a mute button in there somewhere, I think.
Yeah, I did the thing, and then I tried the other thing, and I tried to be real pro, and I pulled my mic down so that I wouldn't be like breathing over the intro music.
Oh, right, I see. So you did it like a radio, coming back from the break.
Yeah, but I forgot that then I would need to put my audio back up when I did want to talk.
Yeah.
So
no, it's good. That's good. How you doing, Tim? Apart from being quiet and then being loud.
It is football season, right? So Week 1 fantasy scores are in. Week 1 NFL scores also in. So
slightly more important, I would probably suggest.
It depends on the person. There are many people who care much more about their fantasy than they do about their NFL football. I would tell you that in my life, I really hope that my fantasy success offsets my real life disappointment in my football program when my football program is not particularly good. And this year, my football program did not look particularly good. The fantasy, I'm doing fine. So
when you said football program, I just got really confused. Like you'd become a college coach in the last week since we did the podcast.
I do coach a 10 and 11-year-old flag football team. Does that count?
Yeah, that definitely counts. What's their fantasy projection for this week, Tim? In the flag stats, are they good?
It's our second practice, first game on Saturday, so I'll let you know.
Wow, stay ready and you ain't got to get ready. That's what they tell me.
Is it? All right, well, there you go. I will tell you that Week 1 is in the books, and damn it, Luke, we had a hell of a Week 1. I would also say, if you haven't done so yet, I need you to help us out. Whatever you're listening to us on, you have found us. Congratulations. But you're going to want to find us again. So go ahead and hit that subscribe button on the podcast app of your choice, on YouTube, on Instagram. That's a thing. On
Instagram is an application or app, they call them, I believe, for kids.
TikTok, if you're on the TikTok, so are we. I believe we are still putting this thing on Threads because it hasn't failed officially.
I'll be completely honest, as the social media manager of the Half Yard Line, I have slightly slackened on the Threads posting after the
So if
initial,
you were looking for us on Threads,
we're still
you might want to call us.
You're still there.
But we're, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, your favorite podcast app of choice. We're there, and we'd love to interact with you in whatever way is best. So please hit the subscribe button. Like our posting would be really helpful for us in the algos. If you like us at all, we'd certainly appreciate interacting in that way. halfyardlinepod@gmail.com is the email. @halfyardlinepod is our handle on all the socials. So please go and do that. But football, my God. So, Luke, what odds could I have gotten on a parlay with the Bengals, the Bills, and the Chiefs all losing straight up?
Yeah, you probably could have got quite good odds on that, Tim. Almost as unlikely as, I don't know if you saw it, there was a guy on Twitter who yesterday posted a fantasy matchup in which he was playing Aaron Rodgers and he needed 0.05 points, I believe, in order to win said fantasy matchup.
That's 0.05.
0.05 points, and obviously failed to reach that mark. So I think there was also someone who bet on him over 0.5 passing yards, I believe, or 1 yard or something. So there was a lot of disappointment scattered across the football landscape, certainly from teams that had high aspirations. Certainly in the AFC, really struggled. We are going to touch on a bunch of those things, but we can't really start anywhere else, Tim, but with the Monday Night Football game played last night here in the tri-state area at MetLife Stadium / Meadowlands in New Jersey. Buffalo Bills at New York Jets. Tim, you were there as the official half-yard line correspondent. It was very wet. It didn't exactly go how most people would have thought, I don't think. But why don't you give us your in-person kind of scouting report on the game? And I don't know where else to start, but with the fact that Aaron Rodgers is not going to be playing football until 2024, if he ever plays again, and he played 4 snaps.
Yes, he did. He was credited with 1 official pass attempt. There was a second that was wiped away for a defensive holding call. That pass attempt went begging, incomplete. So 0 for 1 in his Jets career thus far.
QB win, though. He's got 1 QB win.
Yeah, QB start and win. So, we'll put that stat down for Aaron, without completing a pass. So good job, Mr. Rodgers. I'll tell you, I am not, I think everybody knows this, not a big Jets fan. That's not my team. A lot of Steeler footballs back there, no Jet footballs. But I did go to this game with Jet fans, and so I was appropriately rooting for.
It's an exciting time.
Yeah, root for the home team, right? And I have never seen a collective group of 70,000 people go through this just string of emotions that I witnessed at MetLife Stadium last night. We have a segment on this show, if you're new to us, called the Downtrodden Franchise Index. And we'll talk about that a little bit more later. But my good God, the Jets are well embedded in the DFI and have been for a long time. That game was almost a perfect, synopsis of what it means to be downtrodden. You finally go out, you pay for the quarterback because you're a quarterback away. You bring him in, 4 snaps into the game, he gets hurt, and badly. When you're getting interceptions, your defense is doing everything they could possibly do, and just unbelievably terrible things are happening. You somehow managed to come back and take the lead in a game you had no business at any point having the lead in, and then the Bills drive down the field and kick a field goal. It was a terrible kick from 50 yards. No business going in, doinks it through to tie the game, and then wins the coin toss.
It was like a doink off the middle of the post, which you just never see. Like it was
the ball was spinning the right direction is all I can do.
Yeah.
I mean, it was one of those things where certainly everything that could go wrong for the Jets did on offense, but they almost lost the game anyway. They were +3 in the turnover differential. +3, right? It was +3. It was 3 interceptions and a fumble versus the 1 interception. So +3 in turnover differential. You have got, defense was playing absolutely lights out. Josh Allen was doing everything he could to give the game to the Jets. There were several times where Josh Allen had every opportunity to run for a first down. And for whatever reason, instead of running for a first down, he just threw the ball miles down the middle of the field to Whitehead, who was standing there waiting to catch it. I mean, it was every one of his interceptions out of his hand. Me and the guy I was sitting next to went, well, that's a pick. Like, it wasn't, They were just awful throws. And you still almost lost the game. Should probably have lost the game, barring some interesting decision-making from the Bills. And we can get into a little bit about the strategy and how this game played out. But to watch this fan base completely forget about any of the challenges that come with Aaron Rodgers. When he came out on that field, that building was as loud as I've heard it ever at a Jets game. And I've been to many. They were so excited. This fan base was, here we go. It's time. We've got the offensive rookie of the year, defensive rookie of the year, one of the better defenses in football. We've got Breece Hall, who by all accounts was incredible last night in the 5 snaps they let him play. He was clearly on a snap count last night.
Yeah, for sure. He is at one point was averaging like 50 yards per carry.
Yeah, he had two carries for 104 yards. Yeah, I mean, it was
pretty good.
And it's not like one was for 97. It was one for 25 and one for 70.
Yeah, and to your point on the atmosphere, Tim, and I guess we can kind of step through it in terms of the chronology of the game, as you mentioned. But I was watching it on TV from my apartment, which I was very glad of because it was pissing with rain. It's obviously a September 11th anniversary. There's the pregame is very emotional. Rodgers comes out with the American flag, the national anthem. It's, there's a whole lot of emotions going around. And obviously the
circumstance.
Pomp and circumstance, exactly. And the excitement obviously around A-Rod in New York for the first time, 4-time Hall of Famer, 4-time MVP, future Hall of Famer. He'd be doing well to do 4. And I mean, I was watching the Peyton Manning, Eli Manning broadcast this game. When Rodgers went down, Peyton Manning spoke for the entire country. He was desperate to swear, and he didn't. So good on him, professional. But he was sitting there going, I don't know what to do. He was like, he literally said, this is on national television. He's like, all my preparation for this game was about Aaron Rodgers. All I have to talk about in this game is Aaron Rodgers. I don't know anything about Zach Wilson. So I was just like, yeah, you're kind of speaking for us all. We all go in expecting one thing. And what does the NFL always give us? Something else. The injury was just kind of a bit of a nothing play. We're not medical experts or anything like that, but it didn't look. Some plays looked like injuries, right? When they happened, when Tom Brady blew his knee out, you saw the hit and you thought that looks like it hurt. This one, kind of run of the mill, just a tackle. Guy didn't land on him. Cleat was trapped in the turf. And down he goes. And then when he went to the 10, I was like, oh no. And then when the cart came out, I was like, oh no. And then the next thing was he's in a walking boot, and it's like, this is a car crash. And you mentioned the Downtrodden Franchise Index. Just for new inductees into the half-yard line, we tracked the progress of all of the downtrodden franchises, the cursed teams, the snake-bitten teams of the NFL, and it's one of our favorite hobbies, as Tim mentioned. If you haven't listened to it yet, go back and listen to our preseason Downtrodden Franchise Index pod from a couple of weeks ago. Gave you the full breakdown of what it consists of and who it consists of as well. Now, I'm going to put this out there, Tim, and this is a take from my friend Mike, who's a listener to the pod. So I said I'd give him a shout out. Hello, Mike. He said, does the Aaron Rodgers injury and the nature of it immediately move the Jets into the top 2 in the Downtrodden Franchise Index? Now, the top 2 are the Browns and the Lions for historical futility par excellence. Jets are a solid number 3. I think we'd both agree that. We didn't do a power rankings. However, his question was, because it's just so terrible, is that alone enough to maybe push you into contention as like a top 2 downtrodden team? Because I actually can't think of anything worse. Even if he'd done it in training camp, I think that's actually better than this. He comes out, you get the excitement, the stadium's loud, as you said. He plays a couple snaps, and then he snaps his Achilles tendon. The hope that kills you. Is this enough to propel the Jets into the top 2? And my secondary question to that is this the single most downtrodden event in NFL history? Because I think it's got to be right up there.
I don't think so. And hear me out. So first of all, I told you, I think if they lost this game, which they had all reason to do, we might have had to rename it the Jets Index and just
the Jets Index,
because you have to remember, last week on the pod, I picked the Jets to win 4 games.
You did? You didn't pick this to happen. I think that should be made clear.
I did not pick Aaron Rodgers to get hurt, though that was certainly among the things that might have led to the team winning 4 wins. I thought it would actually implode a little bit differently. But the point is that the Jets played very well at times last year, won several games, gave you some hype, early season success, kind of fell off towards the end. You were going to fix it by having a quarterback who could play. And I get all of that, but they weren't Super Bowl contenders in my mind. So let's set that aside. The other thing is, you sent me a text yesterday, which I thought was just chef's kiss. The last 5 years, they've not had their starting quarterback make it to week 4.
Yeah.
So, this is a thing that has happened to the Jets. He is 100 years old. Now, I did not predict before this game started that he was going to tear his Achilles.
No.
But I did predict before he got hurt that he would not finish this game. Because after his first drop back, Aaron Rodgers looked old. I mean, the Bills got pressure around the outside. He kind of turns like he's thinking about running away from the pressure. He ends up getting rid of the ball, but he used all of his 43 years of life on earth experience not to fall over. He landed funny on his left leg, and you were just like, whoa, that looks like an old man trying to play football. And I immediately looked at the guy sitting next to me, and I said, if he plays like that, he's going to get hurt. And then 3 plays later, he is. And again, I'm not saying I predicted his Achilles. I just mean, it didn't look good from the word go. I can't believe that the professional football watchers in camp, if he looked like that in camp, that they were all super excited and said, this guy's gonna play a full year of football. He just didn't. He couldn't move. He was slow. There was a headline story today about how Aaron Rodgers said he didn't like chop block plays because it doesn't let him extend the play. The Aaron Rodgers that I saw in 4 dropbacks last night either was still stretching or couldn't move to extend the play, regardless of how you had it blocked. So, clearly the Jets defense was tough last night. They gave the Bills offense a hard time, but the Bills defense, Matt Milano was on fire, and they were in the backfield a lot. The Jets offensive line is not good.
Yeah.
And so,
but Tim, I'm gonna hold your feet to the fire here a little bit.
Okay. Sorry. Is it the most DFI thing that's ever happened?
Is it the most?
It's not.
Okay.
No,
it's pretty bad though.
My
I
point
have the Browns leaving Cleveland is number one, right? That's got to be, you lost your team. That's got to be the worst thing to ever happen to a downtrodden franchise, right?
it might be worse that when they came back, they were as terrible as they've been.
Yeah, but being terrible that goes with the code of conduct, right? I think the thing that I find with this, and I don't think this propels the Jets into the top two, just because there's a historical futility element which the Jets have yet to achieve. Just for those that aren't aware, the Lions haven't won the division since 1993. The Browns haven't won it since 1989. Yes, those things are both true, in case anyone wants to look them up. There is a historical futility. I do just think the nature of this was just unimprovable in terms of making a fan miserable. Like, you get the hope. It's a nationally televised game. It's a significant date in New York and in New York and American history.
More people tuned in to watch that game than have watched any Monday Night Football game ever.
And after 4 snaps, I mean, I just thought it was spectacular. I have it right up there in the DFI events ever. Now, I know that they won the game, and if the Jets go on to win the Super Bowl, fine. But I will just say, in microcosm, right? In microcosm, how could you improve that? I just don't think you could make that any more painful for a fan, which is the very essence of what being a fan of a downtrodden franchise is all about. I'm not sure you could improve upon it if you tried, honestly.
I mean, the only thing would be if the defense was bad and the game had gone as you would have predicted that it had gone.
41 zip or something like that.
Yeah, but it's. I think if the Giants were in the DFI, the way the Giants game went was more DFI-y than losing your quarterback on the fourth.
Okay, that's fair. And I think.
Go ahead.
No, you go for it. You go for it.
I think if he looked like the part of a star. Let's say Rodgers comes out and the first drive he throws. He's 6 of 7 for 72 yards.
Sets the world on fire out the gate.
Rope to a
You're saying
corner of the
you
end
wanted
zone
to
for
be
a touchdown.
More excitement followed by more pain is what you're kind of going for, right?
I'm saying all the excitement was hype.
Yeah,
fair. It's a little bit like if Tom Brady unretired right now to come back and play for
the Jets,
the Browns, the Jets. Yes, if Tom Brady unretires to come play for the Jets, everyone's like, "Oh my God, we got Tom Brady!" And then he goes out there on the first play, breaks his ankle. Well, we don't have any idea if Tom Brady was going to be any good. Like, all of the coverage of this Aaron Rodgers thing, and this is where I get a little bit sideways today, has been, hey, he was going to revolutionize this franchise. They were Super Bowl contenders. We had no idea. Aaron Rodgers didn't play particularly well last year. He looked old. He looked hurt. Like, we don't know what New York had in Aaron Rodgers. We remember the MVP Aaron Rodgers, and he did win it 2 years ago. I mean, it's not like it's been forever, but there was no guarantee that Aaron Rodgers was MVP Aaron Rodgers.
The savior of the franchise kind of guy.
It was all hype. It was all hype. If I'm a Jets fan, seeing what I saw in Breece Hall last night was more exciting than seeing Aaron Rodgers go down was deflating. Because that you're going, hey, that guy can actually do the thing we hoped he might do.
Right.
And that's not something normally, the Jets don't have that happen.
Yeah.
So if any, they need to chill. Zach Wilson played really bad. Their touchdown pass was, I mean, it was
an
so
interception
bad.
waiting to happen.
All Garrett Wilson could do was bat the ball up in the air, and it happened to fall on his chest.
Yeah.
So,
I will just say,
I
will just say in Zach Wilson's defense, and that might be a phrase I don't use very often this season. We've seen a lot of him being reckless and not making very good decisions over the last couple of years when he's played. Obviously a high pick, a lot of expectation and the burden that goes along with that. Jets have not drafted quarterbacks particularly well. Yesterday, you can't really take too much from yesterday's game. I would say to anyone who is, a Jets fan who is looking for hope, because, you've run an Aaron Rodgers game plan. You've practiced an Aaron Rodgers game plan. Zach Wilson has had no snaps with the team. Peyton Manning made a good point yesterday. He said, even the cadence. So it's not long after Zach Wilson came in, they used a go on one or something, and someone jumped off sides. And it's like, because even how Aaron Rodgers, the green 19 that he does, right? They're used to that. They've been practicing that. Hackett's designed a game plan for that. He's going down the play sheet going, what do I run with the backup? Because I have no plans to use the backup. plan for that in week 1, and you haven't had any snaps. So I would just say, let's see how it goes. I'm not saying Zach Wilson's the savior by any stretch of the imagination, and the evidence would suggest he's not. But if you were trying to put a positive spin on it, I think that would be one thing. Just to give the Jets some credit, because we kind of crapped on the Jets' bad luck, but they won the game, as you mentioned. I was impressed with the defense primarily. Josh Allen, as you said, very careless with the ball, very obvious on the telecast that he was about to throw an interception, and evidently very obvious in the stadium as well, which is never good. We've been to several games together, and we have the same sense as like, no, and it's by the time you finish saying no, the ball's in the air. Now, Josh Allen is a very good no. Oh, that worked. Quarterback.
Not last
night. But the Jets took advantage of that, and defense kept them in the game. Breece Hall looks brilliant. Garrett Wilson did the brilliant catch. You won't probably see a better catch this season than what he did in week 1. So there are maybe some reasons to think you can hang around, scuff up a few opponents, and get enough points to get you over the line. But it's certainly a different proposition now with Rodgers on the shelf. I think just on the Bills side of it, that to me was a real red flaggy kind of game. Now, it's week 1, and we're going to talk in a minute about how week 1 may or may not mean anything because it's week 1. Don't overreact. But I said on the preview pod we did before the season started, I picked the Bills as a kind of backslidey team. Now, I still think there will be a playoff team, and I thought it then. I'm not going to change that opinion. But some of the same issues we saw with the offense before, the Stephon Diggs or nothing, the Josh Allen trying to force everything because he feels like he has to, very much in evidence on Monday night at the Meadowlands. And, the defense is playing against the backup. The defense didn't really give up a whole lot. It wasn't like they were blowing coverages and they got the doors blown off. I mean, the Jets scored one touchdown, right? So it wasn't. They scored two. Sorry, they scored 2 touchdowns. One of them was actually on offense.
Yes.
But there's no way a good team should lose that game. There's just no way. And Josh Allen came out afterwards and said, it was my fault we lost the game. And the answer to that is, well, yes, it was. And at least he took his punches for that. But this offense still needs to adjust to a different way of approaching games if they want to be successful, because I think people have worked out the cover Stephon Diggs and make Josh Allen try and be Superman, and you can win some games against this team. We've seen it be successful in the past, and it was successful yesterday. Don't know what you thought about the Bills as you sat there in MetLife on Monday night, but on the telecast, it was pretty ugly, to be honest, for long stretches, I thought, on the offensive side. Important
to remember, the Bills have come out to start seasons ever since the Josh Allen sort of resurgence has made them a legitimate Super Bowl contender weekly. They've lost to some teams they shouldn't lose to. They've beaten some teams, but not by as much as they should have. Week 1 has not been the Buffalo Bills' strong suit. There are lots of other good teams that lost today, so there's a little bit lost this week, rather. So there's a lot of the teams that don't do anything with their starters in preseason. Week 1 is you're still kind of getting those guys back up to snuff, and you say it's worth it not to hurt them in the preseason, and you're kind of willing to take week 1 and week 2 as they come because you think you're going to go 13-2 in your last 15 games. And so I think there was some of that to it for sure. The team did not look sharp. The Jets defense was very, very good. I'm a sucker for a drive chart, Luke. Can I give you the second half drive chart for the Bills?
Yes, you can.
Interception, punt, interception, fumble, field goal. That's the second half. And they almost won the game. So, and this is why you can't get excited about week 1 either direction. My team's terrible. My team's going to win it all. Miami looked otherworldly, though apparently no one plays the defense on either of those teams. We'll see. The Niners absolutely manhandled the Steelers. We'll see. The Jets beat the Bills on a ridiculous punt return in overtime after accidentally scoring a touchdown. And, and then Josh Allen fumbling on the very next play, which, by the way, was also definitely predicted by half the people in the building. They were like, hey,
but it was a butt fumble too.
It was.
He dropped the snap, picked it up, and ran into his own guy and dropped the ball.
You can't have the most DFI game of all time if the opponent has a butt fumble.
That's true. The butt fumble is up there in the DFI stakes.
Absolutely up there.
Great moment.
I mean, but even if you look at their entire game, they had 11 drives. Okay. In the 11 drives, they finished with 3 field goals, a touchdown, 3 punts and 4 turnovers.
Oof.
Like, that's really bad football.
It's really bad. And the thing is, there are some teams, my team, the Titans included, where people kind of expect that, right? There's not a lot of zip and pizzazz around the offense, right? It's certainly not seen that way anyway. Whether it happens in practice is to be seen this season for sure. But the Bills, you think, right, it's high flying, it's touchdowns galore. You know, the Chiefs-Bills game from a couple of years ago in the playoffs where there was 1 million touchdowns in about 5 seconds. People associate this team with high flying and high scoring. Now, divisional game, bad weather, yada, yada, yada.
But to be clear, though, once the game started, there was no bad weather. The field
Sure.
was a little wet, but it wasn't raining during the game. Like,
but but all I'm saying is it's where, however you want to attribute it, right? You can say whatever you want. You can't lose that game. But they did lose that game, Tim. And I'm going to throw a slight curveball in here in terms of the structure of this pod that was once promised, because another of our favorite things to talk about, apart from crappy teams, is unheralded players making big plays out of nowhere who you've never heard of. And these players are christened the Jonas Gray Memorial Players of the Week. Jonas Gray is not dead, but it's a memorial to his achievement. Just always want to make that clear. Jonas Gray, for those who don't remember, played running back for the Patriots for exactly 1 week. In that week, he ran for 200 yards and 4 touchdowns. Then he was late for a team meeting and Belichick benched him. They won the Super Bowl anyway because, hey, it was the Patriots back then. But Jonas Gray, the ultimate flash in the pan. And we like to weekly hand out the Jonas Gray teaspoon, trademark, commemorative teaspoon to a lucky NFL player who comes out of left field to stun the NFL world at large. Now, Tim, I'll be honest, I'd prepped for this week. I was all set. Puka Nacua, the rookie wide receiver from the Rams, who had a fantastic game. I'd done my research. He was Utah's Mr. Football when he was in high school. He was the Polynesian High School Football Player of the Year. You know, this is information I had at my disposal, which has now gone by the wayside, although you'll know I still got it in because I did the research. Because, frankly, we cannot look any further for the first Jonas Gray Memorial Player of the Week of 2023 than Xavier Gipson, wide receiver / punt returner, New York Jets. Only made one play. Just the one play. But if you're going to make one play, make it a walk-off punt return touchdown in the Meadowlands, the same place Deshaun Jackson once did it, for those who remember that. I think he touched the ball twice on returns. He had another return that I think was like a yard or something. A 65-yard punt return touchdown to win the game in week 1, close the book on week 1 in the NFL on national television after Aaron Rodgers blows his Achilles after 4 snaps. You just can't look beyond Xavier Gipson as the Jonas Gray Memorial Player of the Week this week, Tim. I'm not sure what it was like in the stadium when that went down, but I'm sure it was absolutely electric as young Xavier skipped down the sideline, eluding a terrible punter tackle attempt and scored to win the game in a crazy fashion.
You know, it was a wild play. I have seen many videos on social media of the stadium going bonkers. In the moment, what it felt like was, oh, we're going to get a return. Oh, we're going to get a decent return. Oh, he's going to run it into field goal range. And then we run a podcast. I should have done the research and gone and seen some Jets player absolutely lays out a would-be tackler at the 15-yard line.
Yeah, it was Chaz Surratt, who's a linebacker, who ran down the field. They highlighted him on the telecast, ran down the field. And then John Parry, the rules official, said, well, it should have been flagged for a chop, for like a leg whip. And everyone said, shut up. No one cares. Just let him play.
Absolutely levels this guy at, I think it was the 15-yard line. And all of a sudden you're like, oh my God, he's going to score. There was also, and you can't hear it because the stadium's going crazy, but there was a non-zero number of fans when he runs across and kind of flicks the football that thought he may have flicked the football a little early.
Oh, really? Something Deshaun Jackson also did.
There you go. There's a little fear about that. But no, I mean, like, listen, obviously the build up on any punt return where you're like, wait a minute, he's got a lane. Wait a minute, he could go all the way. It was very similar to earlier in the game when Breece Hall on his first carry or second carry starts going, and you're like, oh my God, he's going to go. And I still don't know how he got caught from behind.
Good rundown by the corner, I think it was. But yeah,
fantastic.
Yeah, I think the other nice thing about it as well is like you don't see that many kick and punt returns anymore anyway in the NFL. Like it become a bit of a dying breed as the leagues try to move away from returns because they're so concussion-y. So to see that in that situation, I thought was remarkable. Do you want some facts about Xavier Gibson, Tim? I've got them.
I mean, I got one. Can I get my one before
please.
you go through all the ones you researched? Because I
give me the fact.
Him. He went to Stephen F. Austin University.
He did go to Stephen F. Austin. Tim, do you know what conference Stephen F. Austin is in?
One of those silly ones.
They're in the WAC, Tim. The WAC.
Are they?
They're in the WAC.
That. Who knew?
They used to be in the Southland Conference, and they moved into the WAC.
Thinking. Didn't know
so,
the WAC. Okay.
Yeah, they're in the WAC. He is from Dallas originally. He was a 3-star recruit. Interestingly, he originally committed to go to SMU, Southern Methodist, as a corner. He played corner and receiver in high school, as a lot of these guys do. He flipped to go to Stephen F. Austin as a wide receiver, so looks like a good decision from Xavier.
Seems
you mentioned that. Any idea what Stephen F. Austin's football team's nickname is?
Oh, God, no.
It's incongruous, I would suggest, to the region. Lumberjacks, which I'm not sure I think of Texas Lumberjacks, but anyway. But he absolutely tore it up. I mentioned that they've been in 2 conferences. He was all conference in both of them. So he was all conference in the Southland Conference. Then he was 2-time first team all WAC, which is just a great thing to say. He was all WAC.
For the same team.
WAC. Although it's actually a good thing in this situation. He was the WAC Offensive Player of the Year twice. Tim, occasionally I like to drop in a proper trivia question for you.
Oh, God.
And this is one I did last year, but it's a different conference this time, which is, can you name a single other team in the WAC?
And for the record, go back and listen to last year. I nailed this. It was the Patriot League, and I knew
it was the Patriot League.
Another
just
WAC
looking for
school.
one. There are 11.
St. Mary's.
No. Abilene Christian, California Baptist, Grand Canyon, who I did realize actually had a physical presence of any kind, Seattle, Southern Utah, Stephen F. Austin, Tarleton State, UT Arlington, UT Rio Grande Valley, Utah Tech, and Utah Valley. So there you go. That's the WAC.
The only one I could have gotten was Abilene Christian, and I didn't know that.
Yeah, the only other one I'd heard of as well. I think Southern Utah is had a couple of NFL players, but not many. But he absolutely tore it up. I mean, his second year, his last 2 years were as follows. His second to last year, 1,300 yards, 14 touchdowns. His last year, 1,100 yards and 7 touchdowns. He also returned 5 punts for touchdowns in college. That was a spoiler for what happened last night. Did not get drafted, did not go to the combine. 33 wide receivers were drafted in the draft of 2023. He was not one of them. He made a kind of emotional appearance on Hard Knocks to make the team, and Salah and I think Joe Douglas were like, congrats, you made the team, and it was an emotional thing. And one last thing on him before we commemorate his achievement finally. He's one of the few players that's almost like a normal human being size in the NFL. Like, they're all, 6'3" and 250.
190 pounds.
He's exactly 5'9" and 189 pounds. So that was a pretty good assessment there from the stands. But yeah, I thought Puka Nacua, great time. But Puka Nacua got drafted, man. You're so mainstream. You got drafted. This guy didn't even get drafted. So I want to give the first commemorative teaspoon to Xavier Gibson. Props to you, my friend.
And let's hope for Xavier's benefit that he does not take the Jonas Gray path and has another great game next week and becomes a fixture on the team. I always like
absolutely
to see UDFA.
We root for all Jonas Gray players to become Hall of Famers for sure. Let's
a Jonas Gray Hall of Famer. Ooh, if we get any teaspoon award winners in the Hall, that would be.
Can you even imagine? But
do that.
Tim, it wasn't the best week of football, to be honest.
It was a mess.
The Jonas Gray Memorial Player of the Week aside, we spent plenty of time on the Bills-Jets game. We're going to talk a little bit about week one.
I can talk about it for 2 more hours. If
you want to. A lot happened. It was terrible football, but it was entertaining football, which is stuff that I like to watch.
Well, and it had a great ending. I mean, what do you want?
Yeah, but there was terrible football everywhere. I mean, as far as the eye can see, there was bad performances by bad teams. There were bad performances by good teams, or teams we thought were going to be good. You mentioned high flyers in the AFC lost. I mean, I got a smattering of terrible performances here. The Cleveland Browns obliterated the Cincinnati Bengals.
Can we just pause on that one for a minute?
Yeah, I'll give you a couple more and then we can circle back. The Titans didn't score a touchdown. The Steelers scored 7 points. I mean, the Giants got shut out at home against a division rival on national television in the Sunday night game. I think possibly summarizing this entire week where there were two things that I just want to quickly highlight, and then we can go into the Cleveland Cincinnati game. One, Hayden Hurst caught Bryce Young's first ever touchdown pass and then launched the ball into the stands. Which,
Love that one.
If that doesn't show week one rust, then I don't know what does.
Presumably they got that ball back.
I hope so. And then the second thing is that J.C. Jackson, cornerback for the Chargers, much maligned, committed the single stupidest penalty I think I've ever seen on possibly an NFL field, which was on an end of half sort of Hail Mary, but a Hail Mary that was nowhere near the end zone by Tua, committed pass interference at 0 on the clock and enabled the Dolphins to kick a field goal in a game they ultimately only won by 3 points. So just wanted to highlight those two as particularly noteworthy, but there were plenty of bad performances across the NFL. You wanted to touch on Cleveland-Cincinnati, which was a weather game, but Cincinnati came out so flat and got steamrolled by a team that I'm not sure either of us thought was going to be any good. What did you make of it? What do you think of it? Does it mean anything?
Well, I don't know that it means anything. I mean, Joe Burrow didn't play at all in the preseason, didn't play at all in training camp, saved himself for week one, had the injury, and maybe he's still hobbled and maybe hooked, but I mean, I don't know. But I will tell you, they lost 24-3 against a team who ran all over them, to be fair.
3. Terrible.
It ran all over them. But Deshaun Watson was not good.
Nope.
I mean, there were memes throughout the game about like Deshaun Watson throwing the football places that you couldn't figure out. The interception he threw was barely tipped at the line, but awful. I don't know where he was trying to go with it. Sailed right to a defender.
He was 16 of 29 for 154 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception, and they won the game. And that's only really because Joe Burrow was so bad. He was 14 of 31 for 82 yards. So he somehow managed to be worse, significantly worse than Deshaun Watson, who was not good.
So you generally speaking would like to have more average yards per pass than average yards per rush. I think that's fairly well understood.
Certainly any time after about the mid-1940s, I think that became a bit more.
The Bengals had 2.6 yards per pass attempt.
Woof.
And 3.8 yards per rush attempt. Like, just take the ball out of Burrow's hands and just keep handing it to Mixon, Evans,
Sorry,
Evans,
so
Williams.
the better of the two was under 4 yards.
Yeah, the better of the two was under 4 yards. That's right.
That's what we call no bueno.
Well, but here's the funny part. On the opposite side of the ball, so say what you want about Burrow and his injury and the offense needing to gel. The defense got most of the preseason together. Most of their starters got some action. They allowed 5.3 yards per pass, which is not great, but they allowed 5.2 yards per rush, which is. So it didn't matter what Cleveland did with the ball. They got 5 yards of play.
Yeah. And they lost their starting right tackle for the season in the first game. So, Cleveland dealing with some stuff of their own. You mentioned the Bengals. I mean, the Burrow performance was just like shocking. I mean, I understand that was a bad weather game. It was wet. It's week one. Let's not overreact. But I mean, stunning was the word I would honestly use for that. And you don't often say that about games that finish whatever it was, 24-3. I mean, it was just a shocking thing to witness.
Sure.
It was very, very strange and just not what you would expect at all from Joe Burrow. That offense, you think they've got so many ways they can hurt you. They've scored so many points the last few years. Incredibly flat, and it's got to be one where Zach Taylor's looking at the team going, we better get our shit together in a hurry, because if we do that 2 more times, we're 0-3, and then suddenly what the hell is the season going to do? So it was certainly a concern, although they'd like to think that's their worst game of the season in the books week one.
Yeah. Do you feel like it says more about Cleveland or more about Cincinnati? Somehow I think it says little about both.
I would agree with you. Yeah. I just think the fact that there was so much terribleness to go around this week, I just sort of feel like it was something in the water. There were so few teams, even teams that won. You mentioned Miami. We mentioned San Francisco as well, who looked brilliant. I mean, the Cowboys, again, did the Cowboys play particularly well? I would honestly say not particularly, and they won 40-0. So there was just a shed load of terribleness going around. I feel like these teams just got infected by whatever plague was going around the NFL. I mean, I had a quick look at the points per game because I thought there seemed to be a lot of low-scoring games, right? I mean, there's 20.5 points per game per team this week across the NFL. That would be lower than the season average every year since 2001.
Yep.
So last year, the per game per team average was 21.9. So 1.5 more per team per game on average in 2022 than there was in 2023 week one. Doesn't sound like a lot, but when you realize that adds 4 points per game,
well, and it does tend
that adds
to go
up pretty
down
quickly, right?
over the season. Offenses tend to have a bit of a benefit.
We're used to seeing the offenses come out, tear it up the first few weeks. The defenses have to adjust. There's always a new scheme. There's a new ploy. There's a new play that teams just can't defend, and there just weren't that many of them. Cincinnati and Cleveland, to your question, does it reflect on them? I think we can't say for sure at this point. That goes without saying. I think it says a little bit about Cleveland. Not that they're necessarily any good, not that they're necessarily terrible, but that at least they have a method that has some ability to win them games. I don't think it's that different to what we thought it was going to be for all the hype and the chatter around Deshaun Watson, the big contract and all that. This team's built around the run game. The offensive line is excellent. The defense has been improving. They've got Nick Chubb, one of the best running backs in the NFL. They've got a couple of weapons on the outside who can make timely plays. You've got Cooper. They added Elijah Moore, Peoples-Jones, some good pieces. I do fundamentally think this team is going to be built largely in the same mold that it was on Sunday. It's just that the results may differ when it's dry and the other team's not scoring 3 points. So I don't want to toot the horns too much for Cleveland just yet, but I think it says a little bit more about them. For the Bengals, you can probably just say that was a complete off day, and we'll tee it up again on Sunday or whenever they're playing and get back to it.
Yeah, no, I think that's right, Luke. And so looking at, some of the other, obviously the Chiefs loss on Thursday night was a long time ago, but
barely even remember it at this point.
You certainly didn't expect Mahomes to go down. It is unbelievable how different that team looked without Travis Kelce.
Yeah, we spoke a little about it offline, Tim. For those who are wondering, yes, we do talk to each other, not in front of microphones or behind microphones. Shocking at the time. But yeah, it kind of revealed the flaw in the strategy of that offense to an extent. But I also think that's almost a designed flaw. Like, you save a lot of money by not paying any receivers, and then you pay all the money to Patrick Mahomes, and now Travis Kelce and Chris Jones, who is now coming back from his kind of mini holdout this week. If Travis Kelce's not there, they have a bunch of guys who some of them are young and may develop into guys. Some of them have been in the league a few years and probably won't. But that's the design of that offense. If you take Kelce out, he's the Jenga piece that really holds the tower together. Mahomes is brilliant. Mahomes also played pretty well. Mainly, it's just guys couldn't catch the ball. So it turns out taking away a Hall of Fame tight end doesn't help your offense that much, and not having your best pass rusher / defensive player doesn't help much either. That was one where I felt like people really jumped on Detroit's going to be good. Let's go huge on Detroit. Now, I picked Detroit to win the NFC North, so I didn't change my opinion on them. But I would say that game in particular says, well, that says a lot. I don't know. If you're missing 2 of your best 3 players, I don't care who you are, it's pretty difficult to win a lot of games, especially when they play at premium positions. So I don't know if you disagree, but for me, the Chiefs, I'm not worried about the Chiefs. The Lions, I thought were quite good anyway, and I think they're going to continue to be good throughout the season. So I'm not overreacting to that one way or another, though it was a very overreacty kind of game, natural for the first of the NFL season. I think it's time to get back on the hot take horse for a lot of the media landscape.
Indeed, and I want to touch on that as a topic in a moment, but if you don't mind, I'd like to just hit 30 seconds on a couple of different games that have meaningful impact on our DFI, if I could. And so, Commanders-Cardinals, woof.
My God. A blight, Tim. That was a blight on the sport. In week 1, we don't need that in week 1.
However, my
Commanders came out with the dub.
I picked to win the division, getting the dub, so we'll see if they can beat anyone.
Tim,
I
picked them in a survivor pool because my objective, I did this a couple of years ago at the Browns, pick whoever the Cardinals are playing, you'll probably be okay. And I thought week 1, you don't know who's going to be any good. I thought this is a cinch. And then they were losing the game. And I was like, sorry, you're losing against the Cardinals until the second half.
They didn't.
Luckily, they saved
10 unanswered in the fourth quarter to come from behind.
Spared my blushes. Hey, listen, you picked Washington to win the division, so enjoy that pick.
Hey, I think Sam Howell is just fitting.
Growing pains, Tim. It's growing pains.
He's going to be fine. Here's what I'll tell you. I have a meaningful wager, is the word I will use. A meaningful wager on the Cardinals going 0-17. So,
I like that.
Much I meaningful.
Okay. 0-17. Wow, that would be great. But if there's anyone's going to do it, they are set up to fail in the worst possible way. Anyway, continue.
Yep. So, Packers-Bears. So, Jordan Love, looking good.
Yeah, look very good.
Justin Fields, not as good.
Yeah, I thought Fields was a little bit more up and down than maybe people are giving him credit for. He wasn't terrible, but I think he wanted to see more as a passer. There is an element to a lot of new pieces. I mean, Claypool, I don't know if you saw, I sent you a clip that someone compiled of YouTube of him literally walking around the field, which was just shocking. DJ Moore had a couple plays, but that was it. He's also going against Jair Alexander, who's one of the best quarterbacks in the whole league. They didn't really seem to have the recipe in the backfield, which I think is going to be really important. I think they have 3 good backs. They've got Khalil Herbert, I think is a good player. Deontay Foreman, I think, is a very good player, underrated player. And it looks like Roshan Johnson, who was Bijan's backup in college, is going to give him something. Scored a touchdown at the weekend. He looks like, for one of all you dynasty, or dynasty as we would say, players out there, Roshan one to stash, although I'm sure he's gone in every single league because running backs tend to go that way. But I thought he looked promising. I think they'll probably cobble it together a little bit better. The defense getting shredded was not good. I mentioned it in the season preview we did, that I kind of like the Bears to take a step forward, but it does rely on the defense not being turd-like, I would say. And it was BAD bad. I mean, Jordan Love has never really played that much NFL football. There's a shed load of young players on that team, especially wide receivers. They're throwing to guys like Samari Toure, Romeo Doubs. Christian Watson didn't even play. Now, it may turn out that Jordan Love is the next 2-decade Hall of Fame quarterback in the Green Bay production line. But yeah, I would say that one, if I was going to react strongly to a game, is high on the list for the Bears. And I go, that's not great, because Green Bay has beat the crap out of them for years, but they no longer have Aaron Rodgers. So you would hope at home, season opener, but they fell flat.
Yep. Nope. I think that's exactly right. And it's definitely becoming a buyer beware if you're going to take a Hall of Fame quarterback away from Green Bay. They seem to have one laying around, and they don't
only if you're the Jets, it turns out, because no one else has tried it yet. But
no one else tried it. That's true.
Give it 2034 when Jordan Love signs for the Jets. We'll know.
All right, I got one more individual game I want to talk about, and I only want to talk about it for 2 minutes because I think it has one of our favorite tropes about the league, which is that wins don't come in the mail. The New England Patriots were playing against the Philadelphia Eagles in a game where they tried very hard to make me look smart in picking Philly to slide and New England to be resurgent this year. I think on the whole, New England was the better team. I think they ought to have won the game, but there was a very key moment late in the game, midway through the second half, where I really felt the Patriots had an opportunity to push the envelope a little, and they elected not to, and then found themselves going for it repeatedly later in the game in positions where they weren't in quite as good a spot. So interesting to me that we end up talking about Bill Belichick potentially taking or not taking some chances where maybe he should have. And this is for a coach who went downs on their last 3 drives. So they're trying, but if you've got the ball in plus territory, down points, and it's fourth and anything under 15, you've got to go for that, do you not?
Yeah, I mean, I think, especially Belichick, the very famous, I feel like the dawn of the go for it movement was when he went for it on 4th and 2 against the Colts, right? Remember, that was deep in his own end, and there was this big thing about he went for it and it didn't get it, and there was a whole hoo-ha at the time. You're right. I think as well, you've got to think about the situation that you're in and the team you're playing against. Eagles didn't have their A game on offense, certainly, on Sunday. You got a chance to get the lead. You got a chance to score points against a team like the Eagles. You should probably try and score as many as you can, because frankly, they are going to come back and they're going to score points on you. So I think the opponent also matters. Now, you're more of an analytics guy than I am. I don't know what the percentages said about this particular decision, or if that was just you.
I've planted a seed here, and I'm going to water it in a moment. But go ahead.
I see. No. Yeah. I was just going to say, I think even me, as someone who thinks perhaps in a more old-fashioned way about some of this stuff, because I'm not an analytics savvy person, certainly not as much as you are, I think the common sense would say you're playing a very good team who are going to score a lot of points on you, or at least you think they will. So if you're going to go for it, you can going for it early, I feel like is usually better than trying to go for it late, because when you go for it late, everyone's kind of ready for it. And I just think it's a very different prospect going for it on 4th and whatever it was when you have to, versus just going for it on fourth and whatever it was because you feel like it's an opportune moment and you kind of seize the moment in that way. So you've laid the trap. So I've
laid the trap. Here's what we're going to do. It was not a particularly good moment to go for it from a statistics perspective, but I'm going to tear into why I think they should have. The particular play in question is 4th and 25 from Philadelphia's 43-yard line. So I understand.
Well, that changes things.
It only a little though.
How many 4th and 25 plays do you have in the playbook?
You don't
Zero.
have a lot of 4th and 25 plays.
Four verts, I think is the only play.
Let's rewind a little bit to when it was 3rd and 21. And our play call is screen pass right for -4 yards.
Yeah, screen is the ultimate.
And now we have 4th and 25.
Give up call on that particular play. It's like there's just 1% chance of working because everyone runs it every time.
Yeah, and listen, it was 1st and 10, we gained a yard. It was 2nd and 9, we had a holding call, backed us up. 3rd and 17, we got a holding call. Now it's 3rd and 21. Like I get it, but at the give up on 3rd and 21 and then to punt on 4th and 25, everybody in the world is going, Tim, what are you supposed to do on 4th and 25? Well, here's what I'll tell you. They ended up punting 43 yards into the end zone, and Philly comes out with the ball with a grand total of 23 yards of field position change. I would rather take the shot. Like, you've been holding Philly all day. All right, Philly in that game had a grand total of 19 points up to that point. They had gained a grand total of, I think it was like 40 yards in their previous 4 possessions. Go out there and try to win the game. And so it's a little bit anachronistic. I get it. Wins don't come in the mail. Bill went for it on every single possession thereafter. All right, they went for it on 4th and 3 and didn't get it. They went for it once on the touchdown drive. They went for it on 4th and 17 and didn't get it. And they went for it on 4th and 11 and didn't get it on the toe drag or lack thereof falling out of bounds on the last play. But I think you had to start one possession earlier. I think the Patriots win that game if they do that, even if they don't convert there, because I think the give up call took the wind out of the sails of the defense a little bit. All of a sudden, Philly drives down, kicks another field goal, becomes a 2-possession game, harder to win. So a little hidden play plus wins don't come in the mail plus a little bit of bullshit because it was 4th and 25 and who's going to 25.
No, nice.
For me,
nice.
I would.
Yeah. Well, you didn't. If I had the information, maybe I would have changed my mind. But you laid the trap. I walked into it. That's fair enough. We spoke a little bit, Tim, about we're talking about week 1 games and who did what, and we touched on a bunch of the different outcomes there. Both our teams obviously lost this week. My Titans lost in a snoozer to New Orleans, and your Steelers got obliterated by San Francisco. But I just want to maybe take a pause and give everyone out there whose teams got their ass beat or got edged out or whatever happened. There's hope ahead. Okay, there's hope ahead. So I looked up the 2022 week 1 statistics and some facts about 2022 week 1. Just 1 year ago. So here's some of the results. The Bengals lost to the Steelers. They then lost the week after that, so they were 0-2. Then they won the division. Tampa beat Dallas. Tampa was bad, won 8 games. Dallas won 12 games. The 49ers, who won 13 games last season, lost to the Bears, who won 3. Here are some starting quarterbacks from 2022 week 1. Starting at quarterback for the New Orleans Saints, Tim, was Jameis Winston.
Jameis Winston, yeah.
Starting for the Panthers, Baker Mayfield. Starting for the Jets, Joe Flacco. The Colts, Matt Ryan. The Commanders, Carson Wentz. The 49ers, Trey Lance. All of this is to say, a lot can and will change. And largely speaking, teams will be a little bit more on their game as the weeks progress. They might change it positionally. I mean, they're not going to make huge roster changes weeks 1 to 2. But one thing that they will inevitably clean up is penalties. I feel like it was a big contributing factor to how poor a lot of these games were, just the sloppy play. I think both our teams fell foul of this, and I think a lot of other teams did as well. But these things tend to iron themselves out over time. So I just thought I'd look up the kind of penalty count as well, because it kind of fed into this overall thing of like, why was everyone so bad, right? In week 1 of this year, 2023, there were 209 total penalties, and there were 52 offensive pre-snap penalties. Well, that's a lot. So how does that compare to last year? Well, last week 1, there were 204 total penalties and 54 pre-snap offensive penalties. So actually kind of the same.
Yep.
Now, by week 4 of last year, we were down to 193 penalties in total and 44 pre-snap penalties on offense, so meaningfully gone down. And then by week 18, there were only 138 penalties and 37 pre-snap penalties. So my point being, by the time everyone's, I didn't go through every week because obviously there's buys and all the rest of it, but the point being, you're unlikely to see as much sloppiness and error-strewn football as there was in week 1. In weeks 2, 3, 4, it should start to go down. Now, some of that may be just because teams get used to each other, familiarity, especially with new coaching staffs, new offensives, new quarterbacks, new defensive coordinators, whatever the case may be. But a lot of people not on the same page week 1, and that yielded a lot of crappy football. But as I said, doesn't necessarily mean your team's going to be bad all the way through. Although I will give you one perhaps bitter pill just to finish my statistical comparisons. If you lose week 1, there's all these stats, right? When it gets to week 2, week 3, week 4, no, teams that are 0-3 go X percent likelihood to make the playoffs and so on. But week 1, everyone kind of gets a free pass. I feel like everyone goes, well, you're 0-1, 1-0. It doesn't make that much difference. So I thought I'd look up the Super Bowl participants for the last 10 years and see how they did in week 1, just to see if there's any commonality. I don't love to break this news to everyone, having just tried to hype people up, but I give you the other side of the coin. So the last 10,
there aren't many of them each year. This is a relatively small sample size.
That's true. So the last 10 Super Bowl winners, right, which is the Patriots 8 times, the Chiefs twice, and whatever. The last 10, 8-2 in week 1 across the last 10 years. They're 8-2. Right. The last 20 participants in the Super Bowl are 15-5 in the last 10 years. So there is quite a lot of correlation between teams that won week 1 and teams that then went on to be in the Super Bowl. However, 2 teams that won the Super Bowl started 0-1, and 5 teams who participate in the Super Bowl didn't win in week 1. So it's not the be all end all, is all I'm trying to say.
No, well, I would also say those winning percentages are probably similar to the total winning percentage for the teams that get to the Super Bowl. So it would sort of apply it to just another week. And I think that's where I'm going to go with this. We see the crazy in week 1 because the difference between 0-1 and 1-0 feels so enormous.
Yeah.
And you look at New Orleans, Tennessee, 16-15. And you look at New York and Dallas, 40-0. Or San Francisco and Pittsburgh, 30-7. You got Detroit and Kansas City, 21-20. There are games that are 1 point apart. There are games that were not close. But you don't get 1.5 losses for getting blown out or 1.5 wins for blowing out your opponent. You got to come back next week and you got to do it again. And if you're a team that lost this week, you get to go back to the drawing board and go, okay, well, that didn't work. Some of it is really bad fortune. I think I look at that Giants game. Everything that could go wrong for the Giants went wrong for the Giants. I actually thought Danny Dimes looked okay. If they can figure out how to block somebody, and listen, I understand you're not going to change your offensive lineman after week 1, but you can scheme things better. You can block things better as a group. You can be better, more cohesive. Offensive lines tend to get better throughout the year. I don't think New York's offensive line is going to give up 17 sacks a game for the rest of the season.
I think that's fair.
And they absolutely could have last night if Dallas felt like getting them. Or not last night. Sunday night.
Yeah.
So what I would suggest is everybody who is in, oh my God, land, either direction, maybe take a chill pill. I think if this was week 7 and the teams had the records we thought they would by week 7, nobody would be worried about Cincinnati laying an egg against Cleveland or Kansas City without their best players laying an egg against
Tim,
Detroit.
let me ask you a question on this, right? I was thinking about asking. You're talking about not overreacting, right, to 1 week and make sure that we keep it all in perspective because, one part of that is also you haven't had any football to base it on, right? Because there's been no games for the 6 months. So the last time you saw your team play to now, if you're a fan of a team that didn't make the playoffs, I watched the Titans games since January and it's now September and I'm watching them for the first time, preseason aside, which obviously doesn't count. Unless you're the Ravens. But the question I want to ask you, because we kind of touched on it a couple of times, I'm interested in your thoughts.
Yeah.
Are there situations in which you look at teams losing in week 1, and you can use a team from this week as an example, and you did think,
what makes
that
it
is
more
actually
real?
Right. What? Because there's, like you mentioned, Tennessee getting beat. You mentioned the Steelers getting beat, and you mentioned, we mentioned a bunch of other teams. Some teams, I feel like when you watch them lose in week one, you go, it happens, right? You met the Giants, the Bengals, I feel fall into that category where it's like, it just was a shit show from minute one. Like these games they could happen in week 6, they could happen in week 15. Like you're probably going to get one a season where the team just completely lays an egg. Are there teams, is there an example of a team this year that you looked at and you said they lost, and actually the loss itself or the manner of the loss gave me real concerns? And if so,
yes.
why?
I've got one.
And is it the Steelers?
It is not.
Okay.
So remember last week, I do not have the Steelers winning the division. I have them as a borderline playoff team. I think they probably sneak in after not having done so in the last couple of seasons. I don't know. Maybe they go 0-17. We'll see. But what concerns me, and this is going to fly in the face of what I said last week, and that's why it concerns me. The Minnesota Vikings losing at home to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and Baker Mayfield gives me real pause. And it does so for a couple of reasons. Justin Jefferson had a game. 9 catches
huge
for
game.
150 yards. Okay, Kirk Cousins looked okay. Only 2 sacks, did have the 1 pick, but 33 or 44, so 75% completions for 350 yards and 2 touchdowns, the 1 interception. So he played pretty well. Those were the things you're worried about if you're a Vikings fan. You're like, can Kirk still throw the ball? Is Jordan Addison going to step up? He had 61 yards and a touchdown. Is Jefferson going to get so many defenders he can't keep up? Is Hawk going to be able to continue to be as valuable as he was? Those guys you got the game from you wanted, and you still lost to what I expect to be a pretty terrible Tampa Bay Buccaneers team. Now, maybe Tampa isn't terrible. Maybe that's what we missed, and Minnesota's fine. And you didn't like many anyway. But if I'm a Minnesota Vikings fan, and I was coming into the season, I look at that performance and I go, what happened? And the answer is we didn't have a running game. They had 17 total carries to 44 pass attempts in a game where only 37 points were scored. It wasn't like they were, chasing 21 a point deficit the entire game. So we're not getting the running game going. We don't have Dalvin Cook. Alexander Mattison was supposed to step in and just fill that hole because the offensive line was supposed to be good. You're not seeing that. Our second leading rusher was Kirk Cousins with 7 yards. No one else had any. That to me is, now that's also something you can fix, right? You can go back and you can tell your offensive coordinator, hey, maybe next time we run the ball a bit more. But if I'm going to be concerned about a team, it's a team who, when you look at the stat sheet, you go, well, that wasn't a terrible performance. And then you look at the scoreboard and go, and we lost to who? If everything goes the way you hope it did, again, with the exception of the running game here, and you still lose a game to a bad team, that's when the alarm bells, especially if you're a team that was forecasted to backslide a little bit this year, got super lucky last year.
Yeah. 11-0 one-score games last year, 0-1 in one-score games this year, the Vikings. I had them as one of the teams. There's kind of 3 teams that I had, and we've touched on one of them already, which was the Bills. The Vikings was another one. And the other one was actually the Titans, and I'm not going to make this a Titans podcast, so fear ye not. But I think there's a theme to this, and the theme is that there's a theme for these teams. Teams that lose in week 1, who have a disaster, who have the 40-0, it's a bad day at the office, we already touched on it. Even the Steelers, right? The Steelers got mollywopped by the 49ers. The 49ers have an exceptionally good roster. There's so much consistency on that team. Like, who is the new piece in that team? The most significant change is the defensive coordinator. And they've already changed defensive coordinators once in the recent past. And it turns out they can find another guy because Robert Saleh left and they got D'Amico Ryans. D'Amico Ryans left. And now they've added Steve Wilkes. So continuity of talent, continuity of coaching, an elite talent pool to draw from. But the 3 teams I mentioned, Vikings, Buffalo, and Tennessee, I think the problem is fans of those teams, and I'll speak as a fan of one of those teams, would have said, I'm worried we're going to look like this before the season began, and then you look like that. That's where the concern comes in. Now, obviously, there's some confirmation bias in there, right? Like if I said the Vikings are going to suck, which I did, and the Vikings sucked it, you go, well, I told you they're going to suck. But there's always hope that when a new season dawns that you'll fix some of the things that weren't so good for you the year before. A lot of times past training camp, new coaches have come in, new players, and you think, well, we shouldn't, even if we don't win the game, because if you're 0-1, as we said, it doesn't mean it's the end of the world. As long as we don't do X, I'll probably be okay with it. From the Titans standpoint, if we lost 28-26 to the Saints or 34-31 to the Saints, I go, do you know what? That's fine. Like, I want to win the game. But the main thing is, I'm terrified we're going to go into the season and the offense is going to look identical to what it looked like last year, and it did. So that is cause for concern. If you're the Bills, you think it has to be more than Stephon Diggs and Josh Allen on offense, and Josh Allen cannot be reckless with the football. You go in, that's exactly what happened. If you're the Vikings, you can't say, well, Kirk's going to throw for a bunch of yards because he's always throwing for a bunch of yards. Justin Jefferson's going to catch for a bunch of yards because he is expected to catch for a bunch of yards, but we're not going to get the bounce of the ball. We're not going to get the stops. We're not going to get the wins that we got last year. So to me, that's where you can think about drawing some, I don't want to say conclusions, but those are the teams where I put the flag up a little bit to say you might want to be a little bit more worried than other teams, because the fear and the prediction of what you thought the team was going to be looks like what the team is. That's worrying because it feels like more of a carryover than an evolution, which I think unless you're a team like the Chiefs or, of yesteryear, the Patriots, where that's a good thing, you don't want to look like you just looked. You want to look like a different beast, something that's going to offer something new. And if you don't, you start to get a little bit worried. I don't know if you'd agree or disagree with that as a kind of guiding light, but that's what I thought about the week 1 slate in general, was that there are some teams that look more like what you expected them to look like. And if that's not good, you have more reason to kind of chatter the nerves than if you were a team that expected to be good and you played like crap.
Yeah, I see where you're going with that. I do think there's this nasty thing called confirmation bias.
I mentioned it, right? It's a possibility.
Seeing what you're afraid to see as much as anything else. And I guess what I would suggest is that if you were seeing the better half of what you expected, because that's the difference between the Titans to me and the Vikings. The Vikings, what you saw was positive almost in what you expected to see. Yeah. We're still doing the things we were doing last year to win games.
There's a path to being good from that.
But we're not winning. And no, the opposite. The opposite.
Oh, I see. Interesting.
We're doing the things we did last year to win the games, and the wins aren't coming. That means maybe some of the games weren't what we hoped they would be. Maybe it was luck. Maybe there was the bounce of the football. It wasn't a resiliency. If you're the Tennessee Titans, you're looking at this going, look, we've got a new offensive coordinator. He's got to get with the program. We haven't seen what we could be yet. We saw what we couldn't be or didn't want to be, or, it's the, oh, God, here it goes again syndrome. And I don't think, oh, God, here it goes again is what teams need to worry about in week 1. I think it's, all right, what do we need to fix? Well, not that much. We just lost anyway. It's almost like, well, maybe the whole ship's broken, as opposed to we need to go patch a hole here, even if it's a really big hole. Like the Giants' offensive line looked like a really big hole. But if they can patch up that offensive line, I think they can be good. The Titans, Tannehill can't throw 3 interceptions, be sacked 3 times, and, forget how to run the football after, again, in a game that you were not chasing a big deficit at any point.
No.
So, but those are things that, again, you look at and you go, well, I know why we didn't win this game. I look at the Vikings. The only thing I can look at is they didn't run the football, and you got rid of your best running back, Rutrow. And so that's where I think I have a little different level of fear about. I mean, the Vikings look like they're going to be potentially a problem, but like Houston losing to Baltimore, we got a new quarterback. There's all kinds of things Houston can do better. There's all kinds of things the Tennessee Titans can do, but the Saints can do. But Saints can do better as well, to be fair.
Yeah, for sure. Or the Colts or the Commanders who won, right? Yeah, there's certainly stuff to clean up across the league, but I think your point is a valid one to say.
The Vikings didn't have 7 turnovers, right? They didn't have, they didn't get tripped up the 1 yard line and then throw a pick. They played okay and got beat by a really bad football team. And that's where I generalize and come up with some concerns. I watched the Steelers. They got whooped, but I can see a bunch of areas where the Steelers can improve and not make that. I mean, Pickett had some just terrible interceptions. We got completely away from the run, and we were chasing a big deficit, but you still have to run the football. 10 carries in a game with a second-year quarterback is not going to get it done. It's
not the Arena League.
No, but exactly. So that's the difference for me. If what you're seeing is negative and you're going, oh God, this is what I was afraid we might see, there's still time to pull it out and fix it. If what you're seeing is generally okay and it's not translating into wins against bad football teams, that's where I think if you can't point to 17 things that the Bills, for everything else that happened, they had 4 turnovers. They still almost won the game. Don't turn the ball over 4 times. They win the game, even playing badly. That's the sign of a team probably going to be okay versus the Vikings, maybe not.
Maybe so. Tim, do you have anything else in your week 1 notebook before we get out of here?
My notebook is overflowing because it's been so long since I watched football. I've seen every game. I think they were all spectacular. Many of them were terrible, but it doesn't matter because it's football and it's week 1. But no, I think as much as we could break into this for several more hours, our listeners have to get back to work. So I appreciate everybody following us in. Please hit us up on the socials, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, Threads. Hit us up on email, halfyardlinepod@gmail.com. Hit us up YouTube. Subscribe.
Half Yard Line Pod. Anywhere you find
videos.
Stuff.
Yeah, type it in.
Look for Half Yard Line Pod.
Click on all the things and subscribe to them. That's what you got to do.
Exactly.
But no, appreciate you guys. Check us out. Until next week, be good. That's all I've got, Luke.
Week 2, baby. Time to right the ship.
At you. Bye-bye.